finally, we have the biggest mistake that Hugo voters have made. In fact, I would go as far as to say that prior to the 2016 US presidential election, this is the biggest mistake voters had made throughout the entirety of history. The Hugo Awards are full of scandal, drama, and chaos, but today we're not going to be talking about any of that. Instead, we're going to be talking about the biggest robberies in the history of the Hugos. The top 10 times where the wrong book won. We're going to be running through this from the least controversial, in my opinion, to the time that the Hugo Awards were just totally wrong. So for this video, I ran through the entire history of the Hugos and realised I hadn't read anything pre-2000, and then thought, okay, well, I need to scrap this video, and then realised that actually the Hugos have got a hell of a lot wrong even since 2000. I've snuck a couple of things in here that aren't from the best novels category, but for the most part, we're running with best novel. The 10th least egregious robbery in the history of the Hugos came in 2014, when Ancillary Justice won over The Wheel of Time. This one, I would say, is not massively controversial. Firstly, because I haven't actually read the winner, so I can't really say that it's worse than The Wheel of Time, but I'm saying that anyway. Secondly, because I haven't read the whole of The Wheel of Time, so I can't really say that it's better than Ancillary Justice. But, you know, I'm a YouTuber, and YouTubers are very good about talking about things they know nothing about. So even though I haven't really read the winner and I haven't really read the loser, I do think that Wheel of Time would have been a good option over Ancillary Justice. Now there is the caveat here, which is why I put it in 10th, that Wheel of Time isn't really a novel, it's more of a series. There was some weird rules thingies going on that allowed it to get nominated and lose out, but nonetheless, I do think it's stronger, even though it's not really a novel, and I haven't really read Ancillary Justice. I've read other things in the Imperial Wrath world, and not thought that they were particularly good, so I feel a little bit justified in putting this on this list. But don't worry, for the rest of this list, I have actually read the winner, and so can fairly say that the nominated books should have won over the winner, with the exception of number 9. In 2007, a book called Rainbow's End won over His Majesty's Dragon, which is the first book in the Temeraire series. I adore Temeraire, I adore the entire series. Obviously, Hugo voters back in 2007 didn't know that the entire series would be a masterpiece, but it turned out to be a masterpiece. And even the first book is exceptionally strong. Now, I've never even heard of Rainbow's End, so saying that it should have won over Rainbow's End, again, I have no idea what I'm talking about, but come on, it's Temeraire. It's an adorable dragon in the Napoleonic times with Captain Lawrence. It's awesome. Go read Temeraire, and don't read Rainbow's End, because I haven't heard of it, so it can't be good. Okay, at 8, and we're into things that I've actually read, both the thing that won and the thing that shouldn't run, and we have 2002. Can we play that Anne-Marie song? Of 2002. So, in 2002, American Gods won over The Curse of Chalion. Now, we're going to set aside all of the baggage that comes with Neil Gaiman winning, because it just didn't exist in 2002. These accusations weren't there, and so it's unfair to say that American Gods shouldn't have won because Neil Gaiman is a problematic author, but rather we're going to say American Gods shouldn't have won because American Gods is just a worse book than Curse of Chalion. I've read both of these, and I think they're both pretty good. With retrospect, I think there are some slightly weird things going on in American Gods that people have picked up, not so much as The Sandman, which apparently has some crazy stuff going on in, but I can't help myself from talking about these things. The Curse of Chalion is what we're here to talk about primarily, because it's an incredible book. It is, in my opinion, the best execution of the epic fantasy in a Western European setting that I have seen. It is written fantastically. The prose is incredible. I'm going to say, if you're a fan of Hob, go read it. I'm going to say it. I don't know if it's true, but I'm going to say it anyway. This is politically, it's got an older male protagonist, it's got an interesting world. I adore Curse of Chalion, and it did deserve a win. Now, I will say that Lois McMaster Bujold is not short of Hugos by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, I think she may be the most awarded Hugo author of all time, but I'm going to put a little text fact check up for myself to make sure that I'm not lying to my audience more than I already have. Let's move on to number 7. We are now dipping. Clever stuff. We are now dipping very briefly into the Best Series category, which was awarded in 2017 for the first time, I think, probably following the election of Wheel of Time as Best Novel as a thing. I have no idea if that's true, but I just get the feeling that Wheel of Time was nominated for Best Novel and they went, maybe we should make a Best Series category. And a few years later, in 2018, the Wayward Children series by Seanan Maguire won over the Greenbone Saga by Fonda Lee. I'll start by saying these are both incredible series and you should read both of them because they are so good. The Wayward Children I've read 2 books of so far, and I loved the first one, and then I didn't really love the second one. It felt a little bit more like a standalone series of novellas rather than a proper series, which I wasn't hoping for, and there were a few other issues with the second book, which I talked about in my most recent wrap-up, which is going to pop up in the corner. I don't know which corner. However, regardless of how good a series The Wayward Children is, the Greenbone Saga is truly incredible. The first book is good, the second book is good, the third book is mind-blowingly incredible and just brings all of the plot threads together. The character work is incredible. The world is incredible. It feels a lot like an economic fantasy to me in that we have this scarce resource, and that is the main driver of the politics, of the characters, of the story as a whole. This central resource, jade, that allows you to do magic. And it's just so well written. It's gritty. It's... On to number 6, we have 2015's best novel, The Three-Body Problem, and I have a couple of things that I think should have won instead of this. Now, again, I really like The Three-Body Problem, so I'm not mad that it won, but I'm more mad that it won over these books. First up, The Goblin Emperor. This is an incredible standalone. It's a cozy-ish political fantasy about a goblin who becomes emperor after like 8 people or some absurd number of people in the line of succession ahead of him are wiped out. He is ill-prepared, he is somewhat naive, but he doesn't let the power change him and he stays true to himself, and it's beautifully written. We also have Skin Game by Jim Butcher, which is the 15th-ish book in the Dresden Files, and my personal favourite, I would say, in the Dresden Files. Dresden Files is a brilliant series, super bingeable, fantastic entries, loads and loads of fantastic entries, and this is the strongest of them. So I would have loved to see this win a Hugo for Best Novel. I kind of understand that when you're 15 books deep into a series and it's a award that is decided based on voting, you're probably going to struggle to win. It's episodic, so you could technically start with Skin Game, but I think you'd be very confused and probably wouldn't get as much from it as you would having read the previous 1,000 million books. Now on to number 5, and if you're a Remembrance of Earth's Past fan, do not fear, because in 2017 I think a Remembrance of Earth's Past book should have won. For those of you confused as to why I'm going on about Remembrance of Earth Past, The Three-Body Problem is part of a trilogy, and the trilogy is called The Remembrance of Earth Past. Technically there are 4 books, but no one talks about the 4th book, because I don't even think the same author wrote it. There's weird things going on. Read the 3 books and then stop, is what I know about it. Anyway, 2017 brought the Victory of the Obelisk Gate, which is the 2nd book in the Broken Earth trilogy. I love this trilogy. I think it's brilliant. I do, however, think the first book significantly carries, and I don't think that all 3 books in this series deserved to win a Hugo for Best Novel. I think that's maybe a little bit excessive. Don't get me wrong, I mean, that's the series there. I love the series, but meanwhile, Death's End is a fantastic entry. It's actually not the strongest entry into the Remembrance of Earth Past trilogy, because that would be the second book, which I can't remember the name of. However, the second book wasn't nominated, so we're giving it to the third book instead in this kind of roundabout and convoluted way. Basically, the third book is better than the first book, and the first book won a trilogy, but the second book is better than the third and the first book, and the second book should have won a Hugo, but I can't pick it with this video because I wanted to pick books that were nominated, and it wasn't nominated for a Hugo, so instead I've taken away the Hugo from the first book in the trilogy and then given it to the third book. I don't know if any of that made sense, but basically I am the next Eminem, and the third book in the Remembrance of Earth's Past trilogy, we're calling it a trilogy, should have won over the Obelisk Gate because it is a fantastic end to the trilogy. Even if it's not as strong as the second, it's still a brilliant book. This is my favourite hard sci-fi series, I would say. I don't know if that's true, but I've said it now. The Obelisk Gate is great, but it's not that level of great. You get me? Okay, on to number 4, and we have a lot of books to talk about because a very good book won, and then 3 other better books were nominated. I don't know what writers were on in 2020. Well, it was the 2022 Hugo, so I think they would have been 2021 written books. The writers were on cocaine. Can I say cocaine? So the winner was A Desolation Called Peace. This is the second book in Arkady Martin's series that started with A Memory Called Empire. It's a duology. I think, again, the first book is really, really strong. The second book is just really strong with 1 really. I think I gave it a 4 out of 5 on Storygraph, something there or thereabouts. And I don't give a lot of 4 out of 5s out, so it's a great book. Any other year, it would never ever make this list, but for some reason, something was going on in the 2022 Hugos, and there was, like, fire being nominated. So, first up, The Light from Uncommon Stars. This was one of my top books that I read last year. It was in my top 10. This is an incredible book about aliens, about spaceships, about violin teachers who've made a deal with the devil. It's crazy, it's chaotic, it's weird, it's whimsical, it's emotional, it's beautifully written. I adore this book. We also have A Master of Jim by P. Djeli Clark. This is another book I've already talked about on this channel, probably too much. Set in 1912 Cairo, it follows Agent Fatima, who is essentially trying to solve the murder of a brotherhood by seemingly the deity that they worship. It has jinn in it, obviously. It's very well written. I really love P. Djeli Clark. It's got this cozy atmosphere to it somehow, despite being a murder mystery. Oh, it's good. And then we also have Project Hail Mary selected this year, which is one of my favourite books of all time. In my reading history, I've given 16 books 5 stars, and this is one of the 16. So I think that tells you all you need to know about my opinion on Project Hail Mary. I am terrified for the movie, but we're not going to talk about that. This follows a man who finds himself on a spaceship with no memory of who he is, what he's doing on the spaceship. He seems to know quite a lot of things, but he doesn't know how or why. It has one of my favourite characters of all time in it. The audiobook is great if you're an audiobook reader. I own a t-shirt related to this book, which is not relevant, but it's a fun fact about me, so. In summary, 2022 had like crazy levels of peak, just crazy levels of peak, and they picked a small peak, and they had the big peaks to play with. So that's an error in my view, because they got it wrong not once, not twice, but 3 times. even if it was only marginally wrong, it's still wrong. So it's a pretty egregious mistake from Hugo voters, in my view. Okay, we're on to the top 3, and these are so wrong, so wrong, that I genuinely want a recount, because I don't know what was going on, but I don't think the people voting had any brains. That was harsh, but I'm right. At 3, we're switching category again. We're switching category out of books, in fact, into long-form dramatic presentations, which is basically films or entire TV series as far as I can make out. But in 2024, something happened that is just insane, and the D&D movie won Best Hugo? Fuck off. Won Best Long-Form Dramatic Presentation. Now, this movie was better than I expected. That is primarily because I expected it to be totally crap, and it was actually reasonably good. But we also had one of the best movies of all time come out in 2024 and get nominated for a Hugo, and that is Poor Things. This movie is genuinely a masterpiece. It's bizarre. It's by that Greek director who I can never remember the name of, but who is fantastic. Emma Stone gives one of the greatest performances of all time in it. And they picked the D&D movie? Someone explain that to me. Someone explain that to me. This movie is art. It's genuine art. It's incredibly written. It's beautifully shot. Everything about it is just so well done. And the D&D movie was fun. At number 2, we're back to novels now. We have the 2021 winner, Network Effect, which was the first novel in the Murderbot series, but the 5th entry because there are 4 novellas prior to it. Don't get me wrong, I love Murderbot. I adore Murderbot. I think Murderbot is incredible. Do I think that this novel is the strongest entry into Murderbot? No. Do I think it's the second strongest entry into Murderbot? No. Do I think it's the third strongest entry into Murderbot? No. This is not one of the best entries into Murderbot, is my point. It's a reasonable way down the list for me. I think the novellas were really working, and this novel was okay. It was good. I think maybe the series has lost its way a bit, but we're getting sidetracked. The point is, Network Effect was decent. It was okay. It was part of a brilliant series, but the novel itself, taking it by itself, was fine. Simultaneously, we have Black Sun. I love Black Sun, and if you haven't already read Black Sun, go and read Black Sun. This is the book that totally changed my perspective on fantasy and shoved me away from reading the same boring Western European settings into this new era for me of non-Western settings with fantastic world building, building on different cultures. I don't know if I finished making a point, I got distracted. Black Sun is a huge deal to me within the fantasy genre. I think caused something of a shift. It wasn't the first non-Western fantasy by any means, but I definitely think that it is moving in a direction that I really want to see fantasy go. Network Effect was a weaker entry into a pretty strong series. This, for me, is a no-brainer, and it's a massive mistake that Black Sun wasn't awarded the Hugo in 2021. Finally, we have the biggest mistake that Hugo voters have made. In fact, I would go as far as to say that prior to the 2016 US presidential election, this is the biggest mistake voters had made throughout the entirety of history. The 2001 Hugo winner was Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. I think we know how I feel about J.K. Rowling at this point, but again, The same as with Neo Gaming, we're going to put that all aside. If you want to hear me talk about J.K. Rowling for about half an hour, click the video at the end of this video in the little screen that's like, watch my other videos. This book's not that good. Can we be real? Can we be, as adults, so honest with ourselves and say the nostalgia is overcoming how good this book actually is? As a child, I thought this book was pretty good. And now as an adult, I can think back and realise I've grown up and I know that that wasn't a good book. Now, the Hugos voters are adults. There aren't kids, as far as I'm aware, voting for the Hugos. So they have no excuse of being children when this book came out as to why they liked this book enough to give it the Hugo Award. What is worse than that, though, is what it beat, which is A Storm of Swords by George R.R. Martin. Now, again, we need to set aside the fact that George R.R. Martin isn't writing anything, because at that point he was kind of writing things. I think this was the start of his slowdown, but it's also, in my view, the strongest book in A Song of Ice and Fire. And A Song of Ice and Fire is remarkably fantastic series. There's a reason it's reached the levels of success it has. It's had a huge influence on the genre. The character work is incredible. The plot, the different threads that are running through it. This series is a masterpiece, and there is no getting away from that. And when you look at the strongest entry into a series that has been so influential, that has been so important, that is just so well written, and you pick over that book, you pick a mediocre children's book, you are making a huge mistake. What were you thinking? Because that is not the book that should have won. I can't express how stupid this was. There's no reason whatsoever that I can think of to put Harry Potter over A Song of Ice and Fire. Yes, it was successful. Yes, it's great as a child. But looking at the books from an objective perspective as an adult, you cannot say Harry Potter is on the same level of A Song of Ice and Fire. It just is not. And I refuse to believe that anyone was thinking with their right minds this year, except from the people that voted for A Storm of Swords, obviously, who were being very, very clever. George R. R. Martin's been nominated for a few Hugo Awards, and I don't think one, at least in the Best Novel category, which is another issue entirely. This one annoyed me. When I was scrolling through, this one annoyed me. Please like, please subscribe, please watch me rant about J.K. Rowling for half an hour. Thank you. 3, 6, 5, go. 3, 6, 5, go. 3, 6, 5, go.